The Imperium of Man has always relied on the unrelenting and courageous defense of the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. Although not as powerful as the Adeptus Astartes, or as efficient as the Scutari legions, or even as well equipped as the Sisters of Battle, they have always relied on the tried-and-tested strength of the Imperial Guard's armored legions. Since before the Emperor of Mankind decided to unify humanity, its soldiers have relied on the brute force of tanks. These human-designed war machines are the cornerstone of the Imperial Guard. From the Leman Russ battle tanks to the Baneblades, each is a fine-tuned engine of war. But no tank has demonstrated as much firepower as the legendary Shadowsword Heavy battle tank. The Shadowsword Super Heavy tank was originally created sometime during the Dark Age of technology. It was intended to add overwhelming and efficient firepower to any army. It was one of the most potent armored destroyers in the arsenals of the Imperial Army during the Great Crusade. Its terrifying reputation was quickly instilled on the enemies of mankind. But as the unification of humanity spread throughout the galaxy, this super heavy tank became a simple propaganda tool for the expeditionary fleets of the Crusade, as the Imperium rarely confronted an enemy that required the armor-piercing power of the Shadow Sword. It wasn't until the eruption of the galactic civil war known as the Horus Heresy that the Shadow Sword finally came into prominence, as both the Loyalist and Traitor forces regularly battled Titans, Knights, Siege Automatons, and other super-armored units. As a result, many Solar Auxilia cohorts quickly integrated the Shadow Sword into their tactical reserves to confront these growing threats. On the battlefield, the Shadow Sword's sole and unique role was a Titan killer. Its volcano cannon was able to bring down Warlord Titans in one fell shot if the Titan's void shields failed to dissipate the blast. This capacity of sheer destruction made the Shadow Sword a welcome addition to the Imperial Guard's vehicle pool, for it allowed the soldiers of the Imperium to engage enemy Titans without the support of the Adeptus Mechanicus Titan legions. If no enemy Titans were present, the Shadow Sword was sometimes deployed as a siege tank, obliterating enemy fortifications at long range, or as a support heavy armored hunter. The sheer capacity of devastation of its volcano cannon was often enough to demoralize and put en route those enemies of mankind who actually cared about their survival. But unlike its sister tank, the Baneblade, the Imperial Guard commanders were loath to field these rare and precious Shadow Swords in any other role than a Titan hunter. This reluctance stems from the fact that for all of the devastating might of the volcano cannon, the Shadow Sword's drawback almost always overshadows the potential advantage of fielding it, except when it's hunting Titans. The volcano cannon was first designed as a Titan-grade weapon, and it was fitted to a battle Titan. The power required to fire comes directly from the God Machine's plasma reactor. Instilling a plasma reactor into a super heavy tank's chassis had always proved impossible for safety reasons. Hence, the Mechanicus devised a power-converting system, which allows the weapon to draw the necessary power from the tank's engine by increments, and build it up in a set of capacitors until the charge was high enough to fire the volcano cannon. The system proved efficient, but it imposed several limitations on the Shadow Sword. In a combat situation, the tank's engine must simultaneously propel the tank and charge the gargantuan volcano cannon capacitors. This results in the Shadow Sword maintaining an extremely low maximum speed, forcing the tank to lumber forward slowly, meter by meter. And even with the majority of the engine's energy output going towards charging the capacitors, the volcano cannon itself had a low rate of fire at less than 1 shot per minute, and had almost no traverse in its fixing settings, requiring the tank to be bodily aimed at the target. Worse still, the engine of the Shadow Sword had to be stopped before firing the volcano cannon in order to prevent any feedback from the capacitors, which had the potential for catastrophic results. This made any form of dynamic targeting impossible, and leaves the Shadow Sword a sitting duck, highly vulnerable to air assault and counter-battery fire for long moments, as it must restart its engine and start lumbering forward again. Additionally, the energy demands of the volcano cannon were so voracious that the Shadow Sword's secondary armament was reduced to a 2 twin-link heavy bolter system. It was inadequate to fend off any form of concentrated assault. All of these drawbacks meant that in the absence of sufficient large and potent targets, the Shadow Sword will remain in reserves and out of harm's way, carefully tended to by the tech priests and engine seers for those moments when its extraordinary firepower was truly required. In the current millennium, the Shadow Sword has become a relic. Few working tanks exist, as the complexity of the main weapon and the capacitor's function was lost or forgotten, and the vehicles simply were lost to disrepair. On the rare occasion where an Imperial Guard regiment is lucky enough to have a surviving and working Shadow Sword, a tank formation was designed to support this single operating Titan killer. Known as the Shadowsword Domination Force, this formation embodies the application of naval tactics, and it is used when fighting across open, flat deserts and wastes. The unit is centered upon a single Shadowsword, which is the primary command platform of the whole force. Formed up around the Shadowsword in such a manner as to protect and support it is the second echelon, consisting of escorting Leman Russ battle tanks. Further out, forming a protective screen around the large vehicle, are a number of Sentinel Scout Walkers. The force is able to dominate a large region of a war zone, for it is able to launch fearsome mobile attacks and is a very difficult target for most foes to engage. To attack the Shadowsword itself, an enemy must first break through the expendable Sentinel screen, as well as the battle tank escorts. Many of these domination forces field the support echelons of Hydra flank tanks. These are able to protect against aerial attack, and some even have a wing of Chimera-mounted infantry, who specialize in actions against enemy vehicles and infantry. This formation was made popular during the Age of Apostasy in the early 30th millennium, and most regiments still claim to be able to field the Shadowsword Domination Force. Whether this is true or propaganda, no one can really be sure. But thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, if you could put my freedom